Today's story takes us to a moment in the Second World War when the Eastern Front was not only a contest of guns and armor. It was a struggle against mines under black soil, horizons swallowed by smoke, and the way fear and courage break and rebuild inside people. Our backdrop is Kursk in the summer of 1943, the stage of history's largest tank battle. Germany arrived with its newest pride, the Panther and the Tiger, convinced these steel giants would turn the tide. But at Kursk, the enemy was not only ahead. The enemy was beneath their tracks and inside the brutal patience of time. We enter one Panther tank, 5 men sealed inside iron walls, hands slick with sweat, ears full of engine roar. Their orders are simple: advance. What they are about to learn is not. Let's begin. On July 5, 1943, Operation Citadel opened with thunder. German commanders aimed to cut off the Kursk salient by striking from north and south, meeting behind the bulge and destroying Soviet reserves. The plan depended on speed. Armor had to punch through before the Red Army could respond. Lieutenant Keller commanded Panther 314 on the southern face. His crew was young but sharp. Vogel the gunner, quiet and exact. Fritz the driver, proud to handle a brand new Panther. Hans the loader, fast and tireless. Emil the radio operator, always hunched to his headset. Their tank was meant to be a predator. Sloped frontal armor, long-barreled 75mm gun, superb optics. At range, it could kill a T-34 before the T-34 could reply. At dawn, the battalion rolled through a dust haze left by the night's bombardment. The first kilometers felt deceptively empty. Then the lead tank vanished in a black fountain. Another blast followed in the marked lane. The column froze. Mines, Fritz said, and the word chilled the turret. Engineers rushed forward to probe and flag a narrow corridor. Wrecks already began to clog it. Panzer IVs with torn tracks, half-tracks tilted into craters, a few tanks burning so hot their hulls glowed. Panther 314 crept into the cleared lane. Through periscopes they saw only fragments: churned soil, shredded trees, a dead horse half covered in dust. Orders crackled over the radio: stay in the lane, do not drift, do not stop. Every meter felt like a dare. A mine still caught their left track. The explosion was dull, like a giant fist. The Panther lurched and settled wrong. Fritz killed the engine. Inside came a shocking silence, then the ticking of cooling armor. "Everyone alive?" Keller asked. All answered. No fire, no penetration, but the track had jumped and a wheel was twisted. They were alive inside a disabled tank, alive while Soviet anti-tank guns began to bark from a far ridge. A Panther behind them took a hit, burned, and went still. Keller felt what every tanker feared. A stopped tank was a coffin waiting to be opened. Nearly an hour later, a recovery vehicle dragged them free under smoke and shell splashes. They crawled forward again, nerves frayed. The lesson was already carved into them. Kursk was a battlefield that swallowed movement. By afternoon, Keller scanned from his cupola and saw the Soviet defense for what it was: not a line, but layers. Behind the first trenches lay more mine belts, more gun pits dug deep, and hull-down T-34s waiting behind folds of earth. The Red Army had built defense in depth for months. Breaking through once would not be enough. The next morning they pushed toward Prokhorovka. Confidence had turned into ritual. Keep moving, keep the turret scanning, avoid bunching up. Yet the lanes were slow, jammed by burning vehicles and craters. Smoke erased landmarks. Orders arrived late or garbled. Near a low rise, artillery airbursts cracked overhead, and the column compressed. Keller ordered Fritz into a field to skirt a jam. As the Panther climbed out of soft earth, Vogel spotted a T-34 cresting the ridge. Tank, 11 o'clock. Hans loaded, Vogel fired. The T-34's turret snapped, and the tank folded into itself. For a heartbeat, the crew felt like hunters again. Then more Soviet tanks appeared, 3, then 8, then more spreading wide. They were charging hard to erase the Germans' range advantage. The fight collapsed into knife-range duels. Keller shouted targets. Fritz swerved between craters. Vogel fired, corrected, fired again. Soviet shells slapped their front plate and ricocheted with a scream. Inside, every impact rattled teeth and guts. The Soviets kept closing. Many T-34s drove straight into the storm, willing to trade tanks for distance. Keller understood the danger. Germany had fewer Panthers than the Soviets had T-34s, and every close-range minute favored numbers over quality. On July 12, the field around Prokhorovka became a steel flood. The Soviet 5th Guards tank army surged into the spearhead. Dust and smoke turned the steppe gray. Tanks emerged at 50 meters, sometimes closer. Armor slammed into armor, turrets spun as gunners hunted silhouettes. Panthers and Tigers fired until barrels smoked, but each wreck seemed to uncover another Soviet tank behind it. Panther 314 rocked as shells thudded the side skirts. Keller realized the Soviets did not need perfect gunnery. They only needed to compress space until German optics and training could no longer matter. A sudden hit tore into the Panther low on the left. Hot fragments scythed through the compartment. Emil screamed and collapsed, clutching his arm. Smoke flooded in. "Out!" Keller shouted. Hans and Vogel dragged Emil toward the rear hatch while Fritz crawled after them. Keller was last. The moment his boots hit the ground, flames licked out of the side plate. Their steel shelter became a burning signature on a battlefield that spared no signatures. They fell into a crater. Emil's sleeve was soaked red. Around them, the battle raged on. German tanks charging past without stopping, Soviet shells cracking the earth. Wrecks burned across the field. Men ran with fire on their clothes. Stretcher teams moved whenever the guns paused. Emil grabbed Keller's wrist. "Tell my mother, it wasn't like they said," he whispered. Keller understood. Speeches had promised clean victories by superior machines. Kursk was teaching a harsher truth. Even the best machine could be pinned by mud, trapped by mines, or smothered by mass. By afternoon, the Soviet charge dulled. The Germans still held pieces of ground, but their armored spearhead was spent. Loss reports poured in, fuel ran low, lanes clogged. Then another blow. News that the Allies had landed in Sicily. Hitler halted Citadel. The offensive meant to decide the East ended without decision. That night, the surviving crew sat beside a shallow trench and shared lukewarm water and a single cigarette. Fires on the horizon glowed like a second sunset. "We killed many," Vogel said. "And lost more," Fritz replied. Keller watched Soviet teams pull wounded men from wrecks under darkness. The Red Army had paid terribly, but it had not broken. Germany could not replace Panthers and crews at this rate. The Soviets, with deeper reserves, could. In the days after Prokhorovka, German units withdrew and Soviet counter-offensives began at once. The initiative on the Eastern Front shifted for good. For Keller and his men, Kursk was a mental turning point. They had entered as hunters and left knowing the steppe could turn any hunter into prey. This story reminds us that war is decided not only by machines, but by preparation, endurance, and the limits of human nerve. At Kursk, Panther crews learned that armor does not frighten minds, smoke erases distance, and numbers can crush pride. They rolled in believing they were invincible. They walked out understanding they were vulnerable. Today's story ends here. If you want more Second World War tales seen through human eyes, tell me in the comments. In the next episode, we'll step into another battlefield to learn what war really makes people become.